Welcome back for another strategy video on Clans of Caledonia. My name is Ollie Helm. In previous videos, I have made mention of the odd port tile, so I wanted to bring my thoughts together in one place covering strategy about all the port tiles. To begin, let's once again go to my database of Board Game Arena games and pull out some statistics on port usage. This time, looking at how often and when the ports are used for top BGA players compared to everyone else. There will be a lot of numbers that show up in the table, so I will do my best to focus you in on the trends rather than the specific numbers themselves. This first table shows how often the different ports are used by the top BGA players when they are available in the game. For example, the 80% overall port usage means that on average, top players use 80% of the ports in a game, or 3.2 ports out of 4 per game. The most popular port is the 10-pound port, used an astounding 97% of the times it is available. This should give you an idea on where to place your first worker. Now, you may think that it is pretty obvious that one should use a 10-pound port, but let's just see what the non-top players or other players do on average. The 10-pound port is still used very often, as you would expect, but not quite as often. In addition, the overall port usage is 70%, which equates to an average of 2.8 ports used per game. If the average value of a port is about 10 pounds, then top players are only benefiting by 4 pounds across the game. That's nice, but nothing to get very excited about. What is more interesting is looking at when the ports get used, as what we will find out is that all of the increased benefit happens in the first round. Ports can be used at any time during the game, but with most of the ports, the earlier the round you use them, the bigger the benefit. That matters a lot because, as I describe in my basic strategy video, money and monetary equivalents are really important early in the game, as they have a compounding effect. So a 4-pound benefit in round 1 can generate about 15 pounds of monetary equivalents by round 5. Going back to the table for top BGA players, here are the percentages on a round-by-round basis. 41% of the ports are used in the first round. And now the other players table. Only 31% of the ports are used in the first round. The tables are hard to read, so let's just focus on the differences. For every port, top players are using them more often in round 1 and most of them also in round 2. So, to sum this up, on average, top players use more ports and use them earlier. Now, let's look at the ports individually. First up is the 10-pound port. This port is the most popular port for top players for one simple reason. You don't have to do anything special to get the 10 pounds. For example, for other players, the processed goods port is the most popular, and it is a really good port. After all, it is the second most popular for top players, but you need to use a merchant to benefit. If you use your second merchant to sell the second processed good you get from the port, then you cannot gain 5 pounds by selling your grain or milk. Next, we have the basic goods port. The estimated value of the port at the beginning of the game is 10 to 12 pounds because milk and grain start the game at 5 pounds each. The value is a little higher for Steward at 12 pounds because of the extra pound for each trade. This port is the third most popular port for top players. One reason is that you can use the extra basic goods in several ways depending on your clan. Clans Campbell and Mackenzie can use them for producing processed goods. Cunningham can sell the milk at the end of the round. McEwen can use the grain for contracts. And Stewart gets extra income from the trades. Next, we have the contracts port. This port is frequently left until the end of the game before being used in order to have a good bonus contract when the contract boxes run out. Top players do this as often as other players, but what the numbers also show is that this port is used much more often in the first round. The biggest difference across all ports. Once again, it comes down to the additional 5 pounds you get with the contract. Getting a good quality contract in round 1 is important, but getting an extra 5 pounds means you can build up your engine faster. Next up is the exchange port, which I like to call the switcheroo port because you can switch your pieces on the board. Like the contracts port, this port is often left until the end of the game to use so that you can get the bonus contracts. However, there is a sizable difference in first round usage, likely to do with Clan Campbell and Mackenzie. With Campbell, you can put down cheap cheese factories and swap them out for relatively expensive cows or miners, an 11 to 12 pound benefit. While with Mackenzie, you can put down cheap woodcutters and swap them out for relatively expensive distilleries for an 8 pound benefit. Campbell also has an additional benefit because when you place the 4th dairy down, you trigger the contract bonus, so you could end up with a better contract than what is on the board. Next, let's look at the meat port. The 10 pound benefit assumes that you have 1 hexes available to place your animals on, which is normally the case early in the game. The value in the first round is often 0 pounds, as it is not often that a contract is completed in the first round that needs an animal. The only other thing I have to say about this port is that there's usually a lesser benefit to Robertson by 3 pounds, since Robertson can place animals cheaper than other clans by placing them on delta hexes. We'll move on to the processed goods port next. I talked a bit about it when discussing the 10 pound port, so I will just add a couple of more points here. First, the first person to get to the port usually gets a 12 pound benefit because you can sell 2 whiskey for 11 pounds each. Your opponents then sell cheese and bread, so they only get a 10 pound benefit. Second, this port hurts Campbell and Mackenzie a little because the market price of the processed goods will typically all be 1 pound lower due to the extra good being sold. Often in round 2, Campbell can sell 2 cheese for 9 pounds each because normally only 1 cheese was sold in the first round. Now they only get 8 pounds each, so 2 pounds less in total. There's not much of a decrease, but you already know the compounding value of money. Next is the reuse port. There's nothing to say here since it simply duplicates another port. All values are 3 pounds less given the cost of the port. Moving on, we have the trade port. This is the least popular port because it often returns the least amount of benefit, usually around 6 to 9 pounds. It is rarely used in the first round because you don't have enough goods to sell to make it worth using, nor is it likely you will buy enough goods in the first round either. You could get an extra 3 pounds if you sell your processed good in the first round. Often the port is used in later rounds where you can use it together with a neighborhood bonus to save 9 pounds buying 3 processed goods. Sometimes you will use the port in the second round to sell 2 goods for an extra 3 pounds each to gain 6 pounds. 6 pounds in round 2 is probably more valuable than 9 pounds in round 4 because of the engine building nature of this game. And that is why top players use it much more often in the second round than other players. And finally, we have the upgrade port. While the upgrade port also gives 3 points in addition to the free upgrade, those points are useless in helping your engine building program. The 5 pound benefit comes from the ability to upgrade your workers for half price. McDonald is disadvantaged by 1 pound because their workers cannot be upgraded, so they must either take a merchant or shipping level worth 4 pounds. Here's one final table that brings together the monetary benefits for each of the ports. Interestingly, the popularity of the ports for the top BGA players loosely matches the estimated monetary benefits. That wraps up our look at port strategy in Clans of Caledonia. Use them a lot and use them early. Thank you for watching and listening to this video. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments and check out more Clans of Caledonia strategy videos in the links below. Happy playing!